So this is something that I want to talk about, and a lot of people may not like it, but it's in my heart. And women, we're going to talk about this. Women in power and authority. Whether you're in charge at the job, whether you're in a boardroom, whether you're at whatever level you have power and authority. Okay, so that means whether you're at the very top, you could be somewhere along in that chain, but you're in a supervisory position. And it can even be you're the head of a committee. If women do not allow themselves to be healed, if you have gone through things in your life and you don't allow yourself to be healed from that pain, when you get in charge and when you're put in authority, a position of authority, you are going to exert your authority in a way that is going to be very uncomfortable for others. A woman in power who is still filled with hurt and pain will be everyone's nightmare. A woman in a power of authority who throughout her life has gone through some tough times, whether it's being rejected, whether being rejected in the corporate world, the glass ceiling, being told you're not good enough, whether it came from childhood, whether it came from your parents, whether you just had a rough upbringing and people in general treated you poorly, and now you went up the ladder and you become successful. If you don't deal with all that hurt and pain and rejection that drove you, a lot of these women, they become driven by that to say, I'm going to do better. They may have come from a home where there was pain and abuse and rejection and just neglect, and this drove them to become successful. Well, they become successful, but see, they left God out of it. They left God out of it because some of them cursed God. Some of them felt like, God, if you were with me, this and that would not have happened. But I always say, think about Jesus. He came, he didn't do anything wrong, and yet he was sent to this world to become a sacrifice, and he was disrespected. He was slapped across the face. He was spit in the face. He was beaten up by soldiers. He had his beard ripped out of his face. Before his crucifixion, when he was teaching in the synagogue, they were offended. They literally pushed him out, pushed him throughout the streets, and then tried to push him off of a cliff. He was called crazy. He was called mad. He was called the devil. The Pharisees and individuals will come, and they would be basically troubleshooting him. They'll show up to wherever he's teaching to kind of contradict what he was saying. They convince people to lie on him. They convince people to choose a thief and murderer over him. They did all these things. They got to the point they were so bent on killing Jesus. They said, may his blood be on us and our children. This is what these individuals, the Jews at that time, said. May his blood be on us and our children. This is when Pilate was trying to say, why do you want to kill him? I've not found anything wrong with him. They cried out, crucify him all the more. So imagine that. He was born a small baby, cute little hands and everything. And yet those same hands were about to be his bones. There were going to be huge stakes, iron stakes going through him. At some point, he did nothing to deserve that, but yet he had purpose. So there are many people, things will happen to you in your life, these individuals, these women, and they get bitter. So they curse God. God, if you were good, then you wouldn't have allowed this to happen to me. And so they continue to go up the ladder, and the Lord allows them to actually do well in their lives, but they still have this hurt and this pain in them. And what happens when they're in that position, because they are not whole, they may look good on the outside, they may have degrees, they may have things, they may be driving nice cars, but instead inside there's still that shattered pixel heart. And what happens is they now, in a position of power, begin to exert their power in a way that oppresses other people, where people don't have a voice, where they become it's like a situation will be presented in front of them and it triggers something in them. And you're going to have triggers when you're not healed. You're going to have triggers when you're not restored. And so these women will have triggers, and they respond emotionally while using their power as a cover to what is just a personal matter to them. Perhaps they'll know this person's argument is right, but but something in them, because it's a man that may be talking to them, and they have a certain feeling towards men, they will not follow the advice or agree because they have the power to override it. They will have a problem with another woman because something in them, there's a competitive spirit that's there. And so when, instead of being happy to see someone having a project or saying something that makes sense, with her power and her authority, she may get others around her to drown out that woman, to chase her away because of her own insecurities, or she cannot accept someone that is just as capable or more than she is. So she wants to get rid of that person. I'm going to talk to you about some people in the Bible that was like this and their end. We're going to talk about Athaliah, and she had a son named Ahaziah. He was a king, and he had children, he had sons. But once he died, and once he was killed, Athaliah went and killed all his sons. She had all of them killed so she can be queen. And she ruled with an iron fist. Then we have Jezebel. She was married to Ahab. She had power and authority, but she had her own thoughts on how things are going to be. And she didn't care how people have been doing stuff. She did not care about how they felt. It was her way or no way. But she had power. She had the clout and the backing to do that. And she destroyed people. And she had people murdered. And she had people killed because of her power. But what was the end of Jezebel? What was the end of Athaliah? Both of them ended up getting killed. We may not be in the time where the times where now people are going to necessarily kill that person, even though that happens. But a lot of times what's going to happen, there's going to be a downfall of these women at some point. There'll be a time that they're going to reign and they're going to just be thriving. They're just going to seem like they're doing good, but there comes a time that they will fall. You may see it in this life, or these people may live all the way ripe old age, and one day they pass away. But understand that their time has not ended. It ended in this life, but when they get over in eternity, they still have to face all the things that they did. Women, you cannot be in power and authority if you still have triggers and hurt and pain that you do not allow yourself to deal with. You do not allow God to get in your heart and heal you, because you are going to be a nightmare in the boardroom, at the conference room. You're going to be a nightmare in the community. Anything. You cannot take advice. You cannot work well with other women. You cannot work well with other men because you're still a broken child on the inside. You still remembering your father. You still remember what your brothers did. You still remember certain violations. You may still remember how you were overlooked, how people talked about you, how people mocked you, how people called you ugly, how people called you this and that and incapable. And so you take all that bitterness with you, and now you in a position of power and authority, and now it's getting in the way of good judgment. It's getting in the way of seeing things clearly. It's getting in the way of being fair and impartial. And so you may be beautiful on the outside, you may be successful, but there will be hints of your brokenness in the decision that you will make. When you begin to hurt other people, when you use your power and authority to get other people to gang up on somebody, to get rid of somebody. There's a lot of women who are in authority that you don't move a finger. You just say something, or you say something in passing to stir the hearts of others to go against someone, while you innocently sit back and say, I don't know what happened. I didn't tell them to do that. But inside you're happy. There are many women who are sitting in political positions who are just angry and bitter, because inside they were driven, their pain and their rejection drove them to say, I'm going to be successful. And now they're in that position for revenge. And truly what happens, those men, those individuals, those people that hurt them still has power over them. Because even in that state of success, they still see red when they see a man. They still see red when they see another capable woman. They put their target on a person that may be where they used to be. They will treat the person that's where they may have started off low, and they see that person that was in that low position, and they will mistreat that individual and give that person such a hard time because they want to just get rid of anybody that reminds them of where they used to be, because they have not reconciled within themselves and dealt with the hurt and the pain correctly. And so you will find individuals being in power, doing all kinds of crazy stuff just because they have the ability to do it. You'll find people in power making unjustifiable decisions just because they have the power to do it, because of how they feel about the matter. There are people who get in positions of authority and power to be able to do things, to say, well, I'm going to let this person go free. I don't care what you guys say, because this is how it's been for our people. There are people who get in power and authority, say, I'm going to get back at all men for what they did. If a man comes before me in this courtroom, I'm going to throw the book at him. I don't care if he's innocent. I'm going to get in power so that I can destroy any woman. You know what? All these attractive women is always getting off. I'm going to throw her under the jail. There are women who has this idea. There's women who is in position of power where they want attention. And so if they set things up where if they don't want any women working there, and if they do, they're going to treat them poorly. They're going to do things to make sure they feel left out. And they're going to embrace all the guys. They're going to embrace all the men. And she's deliberately doing something and sending a message to that woman. Women in positions and authority that will look and say, I want her husband. I want who she's with. Or notice and know some people may be dating in the workplace or dating in the ministry, and she decides, I want him, and just do things to cause them to cause a breakup, or use her power and authority where she suddenly needs him to be working with her on something, or to go somewhere and to do some things, and put on her feminine charms and wiles and woo that man, break up their relationship. She may be in a position in a church and saying she's a prophet, and get up and give a false prophetic word to break up that relationship. Y'all need to understand the danger of this type of woman, of an Natalia, of a Jezebel. She will scheme and she will use people to do her dirty work. And it all goes to what was going on inside. Has anybody wondered what was Jezebel's issue? What drove her to this? What drove Atalia to this? There's a backstory that we don't know. And then there's some people, they were just born in privilege. They're women, they're just raised to think that they're all that and a bag of chips. They have no substance within them. Nothing, just you're better, you're pretty, you're this, you're better than this person. If you drive a better car, you're better than this person. If your hair is longer, you're better than this person. If you're tall and you have these things, then you're better than this person. But I want you to know that there's people who have nothing that has more happiness than the person who has everything. Yes, riches can get you some things, but you know what? As you can see, riches don't keep marriages together. Riches don't keep them from getting a broken heart. Riches are not keeping people from jumping out of a window. Riches are not keeping people from being set up. But yes, money can buy you some nice things nonetheless. But even with all of that, it's not going to save the soul. And so there are women in power who are still broken, who are destroying lives. And I don't know where this video will go or where it goes, but God is calling you to repent. You may think that you are a God in yourself, or you don't believe in God, but you've been warned today. You hear it today. Stop ruling your marriage with an iron fist. You are not the head of the house. It doesn't matter if you're making more money. It does not matter if you're older than that man. You are not the head of the house. And that is why there's chaos. That's why at a workplace, a woman can cause absolute chaos. Because when you put a woman in authority who's not submitted to God, who has not dealt with her hurt and pain, she can bring a climate within a home, even in a house. A woman who has no control over her emotions and her spirit can cause such tension in the household, can cause such tension in a room. You can cut through it with a knife. She can bring such discomfort at the workplace where when she's not there, everyone is at ease. But as soon as she enters in, the atmospheres change. That is the danger. That is why, in my opinion, women need covering. That's why, in my opinion, I'm speaking in my opinion right now, why some women cannot be in certain positions of authority in the house of God. This is my opinion. Unless she submits completely to God. She needs a husband. She needs a covering. A husband. Just being a single pastor in a church, I don't know, guys. And this is my opinion here. I'm not saying God said. So I'm making that clear. Because sometimes that emotion, her emotions can get so out of control that she's not yielding to God, she's going to be a problem. And that's why at the workplace, she can be a nightmare. That's why in the office, everybody is at ease, is on edge because she is out of control. Her emotions. She doesn't know how to leave yesterday. She doesn't know how to still go forward professionally despite someone disagreeing with her. She is going to take things to the next level. And this is a woman who has no rule over her soul. This is a woman who is unyielded to God. You're looking at a living embodiment of an Natalia that if it was legal, she would kill everybody off. If she could, and if she was in the days of Jezebel, she'll have people executed and killed. If she could, the only thing that keeps some of these women from doing the craziness that they do is the current laws of the land that they can't do it. And so that's why they resort to do little evil, vindictive things behind closed doors or in a way where she can't be figured out. But I want you to know it doesn't matter if no one sees you. God sees you. And that's who you need to worry about. You may be getting away with it, but you're not getting away with it with God. You are not a CEO. You're not a boss. You're not a judge. You're not a Supreme Court justice. You are not this big shot. You are not this person that's making $200,000 or $600,000 a year. You are not that to God. You are a soul. This is not reality. When you stand before God, none of that's going to matter. God can use women. He did use Deborah as a judge. And I don't know if Deborah was married. I'm not saying God cannot use women. I want to make that clear because somebody going to run with this. So let me make this clear. God can use a woman. God can be the covering for a woman. But I believe after a while, when you are in a church over people, and you need a husband. You need a husband. There's a reason why. The man is the head of the family. And granted, sometimes you don't have a husband and God puts you to do the things that he tells you to do. And depending on that position, God is enough. He is your covering. But in my opinion, when you're in a church, a single woman running a church, a household, and have men underneath you and all of this, it's just something is going to just not work out. Because it's a lot of pressure and a lot of things to deal with. And while you can't do it, there's certain positions that I believe that A woman trying to do that on her own, not having any covering, not having a husband, it's going to be very complex in the house of God. And that's where you find women who are in the leadership positions in the house of God that is in their feelings, and they're vindictive. And if they have a problem with a sister, they can't get past that. So they're going to walk by the sister and not going to speak to her. And then they're going to preach a message that's towards the sister. And then she's going to get her buddies, and they're going to be walking around like high school hooligans, and yet dressed it up like we're Christian women, and play these games and do this thing, and then the attraction, and then not being able to discern when she's talking too much to a gentleman, and not understanding certain things and understanding the position of a man. And there's certain things you just cannot say to this man, and it's not necessarily about sexual content, but there's certain ways you can't address a man and speak to a man regardless of the position that you're in. This is somebody's husband. You can't just talk to that man that way. You can't just think you can call up that man like that. You can't deal with you can't be pulling his wife and telling her to do this and telling her to not listen to her husband, or not being sensitive to what her husband is needing from her. There's so many things that can happen. And that's why, in my opinion, women heading up churches alone by themselves, it can be catastrophic and it can be problematic. That's my opinion. And I leave it at my opinion, because I can't say God said, because I know God is able to do many things. But there are some rare situations where the women are able to do things the way that they should. But more often than not, there's a bunch of emotional women that's doing different things that are like, they're catty. There's a catty behavior. There's this jealousy. Women who are in the house of God, and other, you're in charge, you're the head, you're the pastor. Here's other women coming in who are capable, but because there's something within some women, that brokenness, they're intimidated that this woman has talent and she can speak. So she uses her position to keep her down, or I want her out of my church. I don't want her here. She's pretty. She's a threat. Or they may have a husband, and they have a husband who is, got issues with the flesh. And so she needs to get her out because she knows that's his type. I don't know why I'm here today and why the Lord has me talking about this. But women, you are ruling your house and ruling over your husband. It is sin. That is not your position. Your husband shouldn't be ruling over you either. Understandably, there are some exceptions where the husband is completely out of position. He's not doing the things that he needs to do, and the wife has to do what she has to do to safeguard her family. And prayerfully, that man will get to the place that he needs to be. But sometimes women, you are in this position for no good reason other than you don't want anyone to tell you what to do, and you want to be a certain way. So why get married? The husband has become nothing more than an accessory to say you have a husband. But at home, he's at home drinking out of a sippy cup. Might as well be. He's one of the kids. You're not listening to him. Sometimes maybe he was an unbeliever and you got saved before him. And now God has saved him, but you're not allowing him to be in his rightful position. Some women, you are being disrespectful to your husband because you have your heart and your mind set on somebody else. You have more respect for the pastor of your church. And so what you're doing, you're taking the nakedness of your husband to this man who is making you are losing your respect or anything for your husband because you're putting his business to another man. How would that look like with Jezebel? Your husband is in your house, but Jezebel was saying she's trying to find out the weakness of Samson. And when she finds out, she goes and tells the Philistines, oh, I found out what his weakness is, and call them up to come to destroy him. That's what a lot of these women are doing. Delilah. I believe it's Delilah that I said. If I said Jezebel, that's not what I meant. You're being like Delilah. Your husband trusts you, and he's laying on your lap, and he's talking to you, and you know how to get to him. But you go now to these other men, going to your pastor and telling him all these things about him and making him vulnerable to these people. And some of you, these male friends that you have, you're going and you're telling these men, all these men have a little bit of your husband's business, and your husband know nothing about these men. Women in power. God can give women positions. Atalia, she was in a position of authority. I'm sorry. Deborah, she was a judge. She led the men of Israel. The men of Israel said, we're not going without you. Come with us into the battle. Okay, she didn't fight, but she was there. God's given women authority. He gave women equal dominion and authority. However, there was a distinction. So it's not for the man to be beating down the woman and saying that you're nothing. That's why he took the woman out of the rib of man. And that's why we both have man at the end. Man and then woman. So we're not to be treated poorly. We're not supposed to be under the feet of man. We're not supposed to be over man either. But women are still eating the fruit of deception. And the fruit that they're eating today is about power. And it's about empowerment. And it's about feminism. And it's about this. Well, I thought feminism was just about women, being able to work, and women being able to be treated with respect and equality. But if you truly study feminism, you understand feminism. I studied feminism for a class I had to take, a college course. And feminism has a very dark side to it. It is way more than what you and I may think or what I thought. It is about restructuring the family. Feminism teaches about restructuring what family means. Getting rid of the fathers. There's no need for them. Coming up with your own type of family if you want to. While still you want to have children, but changing the dynamics where the children not necessarily doesn't need the care of the parents. You don't need to be home. The children need to be able to fare for themselves. Study deeply what feminism is all about. Because I was very shocked when I was taking that college class. That specific class. And so they're eating of that fruit. They're eating the fruit of strong and independent women. Well, yes, God wants you to be strong and independent, but not the way this world is making it out to be. Strong, independent means walking all over people, being loud, talking in this man voice. And speaking a certain way, and that's not your voice. Yes, there's a business voice. There's a way we have to say. We don't have to be smiling and being, ditzy. I'm not saying that, but a lot of times there's a persona that's put on that is very exaggerated, ready for battle, ready for confrontation. Opinions are considered confrontation. Not agreeing is considered to be is butting heads. But what it is, it's a brokenness. And you put somebody in position of power that has not dealt with daddy issues, who have not dealt with their heart being broken. They are still back at the prom when someone did not dance with them. They're still back at elementary school in the mind where people used to make fun of how they looked. They're still in high school where their boyfriend cheated on them. They're still back at where they grew up, how people used to tease them at school, and now they use that as their fuel to become successful, and now it becomes their hindrance. It becomes their beating stick. So they can be a judge, they can be a lawyer, they can be just someone who is in a high esteemed position, they can be a pastor's wife. They can be the head of a committee. They can be working with other women, but just cannot get along with anybody because they're still dealing with their inner demons and pains. And now they have money and power and authority to run amok. But God can heal your heart. Yes, sometimes you had to defend yourself. You had to protect yourself. You needed to do those things because you were in danger. Trying to be trusting would have cost you your life at some point, or your innocence, or an innocence that was already taken. But understand that the Lord has allowed you to thrive and to do well. Not for you now to become a predator to other people, to those who are weak. The men before you is not your father. The men that you work with are not those that violated you, even if they sound like them and look like them. The women are not your competitors. You're not there to beat them down because you want to prove to other people that you're not a weak woman. So you may feel if you're being compassionate and helping other women, then that's going to make you look bad. The Lord did not send you and allow you to thrive so you can become this Power Ranger of terror. Because believe me, the people that you hurt and the people that these individuals are destroying, God sees it. And your time will come. It may seem like it'll never come because right now you're thriving. And all these years that these individuals have been doing this, God, this is the amount of grace God has given them. Because when they fall, the thing about it is they'll thrive for a long time and suddenly the fall comes. When God's judgment comes, suddenly they'll be right down. They lose everything in an instant. And you cannot go through life, these individuals, you cannot go through your life thinking you can do things to people, firing people unfairly, setting them up, doing all these things to people and hiding your hands. You are not hidden from God. Surrender that darkness to God. Surrender that part of your heart to God, because the Lord can still show you how to have a heart of flesh and not a heart of stone. You can still make those tough choices. You can still make decisions that's not necessarily going to be popular, but it's not coming from a place of venom. You'll be able to see clearly. You'll be able to hear things clearly. You'll not just be listening through the ears of offense and bitterness and receiving information in a wound that's already open and aggravated. So anything that touches it aggravates it, and you have to respond in a way to defend yourself. God wants you to see clearly. You know, the Bible tells us in Revelation 3, the word of God says, you think you have need of nothing because you're rich and you have need of anything. Okay? And you don't realize that you're miserable, poor, blind, and naked. You are miserable, poor, blind, and naked. Let me find that for you guys real quick. And there's a lot of people that's walking around in these positions that they are miserable, poor, blind, and naked. In Revelation 3, chapter 17, it says, because you say, I am rich and increased with goods and have need of nothing, and you know not that you are wretched, miserable, and poor, and blind, and naked. And for many of you that's behaving this way, people recognize that you are wretched. They recognize that you are miserable because you're showing them your wretched side. You're showing them your miserable side. You think that you can just go back and forth and be nice. That's not how that works. The word of God says a city without walls, a man who has no rule over his spirit is like a city without walls. They don't realize that they're a mess. They can change at any moment. The ceiling can come crashing in at any moment. And sometimes in all the midst of the success and everything that these individuals have, no matter they have beauty and cars and brains and brawn, they are wretched and miserable and poor and blind and naked. But God is inviting you today to turn yourself around. That he will try you with fire. Change those things within you. Burn out those impurities. The spiritual fire of God, that he will clothe you in the correct raiment, and that he will take away your shame, and he will anoint your eyes that you may really see. Because all the power and all the clout that you have now means nothing in eternity. And you're going to still have to give an answer for all that you've done here. He doesn't care about you building little orphanages and personally knitting little booties for the children in Tibet. Because a lot of times people do that for show. He looks at your heart. He knows your heart. There are a lot of people who rape children that give big donations. So you must understand there's a difference. Those donations don't mean anything. You can't bribe God with the money that he gave you. He gave you the ability to be able to earn that money through his power. You can't give him back that. You can't be oh God, I did this, I did that. You did nothing. You simply you picked up things that God had already provided. He owns all things, but he looks at your soul. So turn around and stop what you're doing. He did not allow you to become the person that you have become. You may think you did it on your own. No, you did not. He protected you and he kept you. And now you're in certain positions. He didn't put you there so you can become a bull in a china shop in other people's lives. Because they are souls. You may look at their skin tone. You may look at their financial status. You may look at where they're at on the social ladder and think that you can treat people a certain way. But God has strategically placed people around you, regardless of their social status and what they drive and what they wear. They are his souls. And so you mistreat the cook. And if you mistreat the person that works in the parking lot, and you yell at the person at the cash register, and you mistreat the person, the clerk downstairs, and you walk past housekeeping, and you're a jerk to the person that did not do whatever in the hotel room because they didn't put a glass just the perfect way you want it. That is a soul that you've offended, and a record of your offense is in the books before God. And watch who you mistreat. Because sometimes the person that you think is just this poor, low-end person is an angel of God in disguise. God bless.